Well, I'm back for the fourth video in my series on building web applications with .NET-Core, JSONAPI, and EmberJS. Today I'm going to dive into setting up authentication on the client side. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and install ember-simple-auth. So this guy. So let's just follow the directions. And what this package does is it manages sessions within the app and handles authentication with the API. All right, everything looks good. So let's just follow the tutorial. We're going to create some login buttons so that the first thing we'll check is if the user is logged in, then we'll provide a logout button. If this user is not logged in, then we'll provide the login button. So let's create a login button component. All right. Here's our component, the login button, and we're going to do this. We're going to inject the session, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. So we're going to use an ES6 feature called object deconstruction. Alright, so this is kind of Ember's dependency injection system. So let's take a look at the template. And let's just add these guys in here. Okay, so now we need an action called invalidate session, where we will do this. We will invalidate the session using the service. Okay, that looks good. Alright, so now we've got some buttons, and we'll head over to our app HBS page and we'll just go ahead and put them there. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is we need to set up our authenticator, and we're going to be using the OAuth2 password grant authenticator because that's how our API is set up. If you're not familiar with OAuth2, go check out the spec so you can understand the different grant types. So let's go over here. We need to create an authenticators folder. We'll call it OAuth2. And all we're doing is extending the default OAuth2 password grant flow, making it available within our app. All right, so let's create. So if you go through the tutorial here, or the walkthrough, there is a customizing an authenticator right here that shows we can specify our token endpoint using this property. So let's do that. Well, let's make it configurable. So we're going to call this token path, and this is going to be what we specified in our API configuration. So it'll go out to localhost 5000 /connect/token. And now let's import our environment. And using some more ES6 stuff, we can use string interpolation to build our URL. Alright, so that should go out to our API to get its token. Alright, next thing, let's go ahead and set up a login route. So we got the login route. Let's generate a login form component. And actually, let's just to show you guys something a little bit different. Another way you can organize your components is you can do it by folder. So if I wanted to say, let's say I have a forms folder, I can then have a login form component, and you can have a component, and you can have a template HBS file. Let's just copy this guy, structure. Alright, so we've got our login form component. And let's head back over to the documentation. So still just stepping through our walkthrough. Let's copy and paste the login form code. Okay. All right. And so we in action authenticate. So when the form gets submitted, it's going to call authenticate. And let's pop back over to the documentation. We'll just copy this. All right. Make sure we can get our token. First things first, let's do our login route. And add our form. Okay, looks good. And let's start the server. It's never a good place to put this guy. Okay, so we need to add our outlet back to application HBS so it can render properly. Alright, so now we've got our login form. And let's take a look at those credentials we set up to default to So we got guest one bang. Okay, connection refused. Well, here's our server running. It is not. Alright, let's try it again. Okay, we got our token. So you can see the response. We have error token. Let's take a look at where is this being stored and how is ember-simple-auth persisting it. By default, it's using local storage. So you can see, you can just pop over here. When this clears, the token will clear. So if I delete, you notice there's an observer on it. So I already have to log in again. Log in, it says log out. Delete, log in. Okay, so you guys get it. All right, cool. So now that we've gotten our token, you can see how it's being persisted. How do I add that to my authorization header? So ember-simple-auth provides authorizers, but it looks like in the future that's going to change. So this issue, deprecate authorizers, is the one I'm referencing, which shows that basically the discussion is that the way ember-simple-auth has set up the authorizers isn't particularly helpful, and there's probably a better way to do it. So if we go to our application adapter, we can inject the service, the session service. And then we can specify our headers for our requests. Let's do it like this. So we're going to observe changes to the token being stored in the session. Let's get the access token. And put it in the headers, in the authorization header. That looks right. Oh. So let's take a look at it and make sure. So we're in. So let's go take a look at our to-do items. Let's see, to-do items. The typo. Yes, I did. Okay. Pre-flight doesn't pass, no access control. Okay, so this sounds like a cores issue. We have cores enabled. Yes, we do. But let's modify it a little bit. Now you should actually be a little bit more explicit than this. Currently, I'm just going to go ahead and allow everything. But this isn't advised for production. You should definitely explicitly say the things that you expect from your client application. And of course, this is during development anyways. So when you run in production, they'll likely be served from the same domain. It depends on your architecture, but it's typically common to just serve your static files from the same domain as the API. So let's kick our server. All right, so what you're seeing here is we went out to request our to-do items, and we included our authorization header in it. So we were able to fetch the to-do items. Now if I log out and reload, we're going to get a 401. Okay, so what do we do when we get a 401? So ember-simple-auth provides for authenticated routes so that the entire route underneath it requires the session to be authenticated. And this will help prevent any of these 401s from our API. And because if the user's not authenticated, we're not even going to let them make requests. So in order to do that, we're going to create a secure route. And let's move our to-do items underneath that route. And change our folder structure a little bit. Put to-do items in here. And same with the routes. Okay. So what does our secure route need to look like? Pop back over there, ember-simple-auth. There is the authenticated route missing. Okay. So let's log in. Just. Okay. Let's go to our secure route. To-do items. That worked. Let's log out and try reloading. And it's going to kick us back to login. So now we've got our, and if let's try that one more time. I'm not logged in. It's going to redirect me to the login route. Okay, so that was easy. But let's say after the user logs in, I want to redirect them to the to-do items list, so I don't have to go up to the URL and manually do that. Well, lucky for us, they provide a session authenticated hook for us. So under our routes, if we create the application route, This is just the base route. They have an application route missing. And that gives us a hook of session authenticated. Make sure you call the base class, or the base method. If you don't, things could not work properly. Okay. So what this says is when the session's authenticated, let's transition to the to-do items route. Row the breakpoint. Okay, great. So we've now transitioned to the to-do items route. Okay. So one other thing I think I'll go over is what happens when I have an invalid login. So currently, it kicks out a 400 and it just says invalid grant right here because of this. Remember, we copy and pasted the login code. And this is our login form component. And we have this little guy here that says if error message, display the error message. So that's what's happening. So let's change that up a little bit. I'm going to show you one more package. It's called Ember Notify. Show you how to use that in some more. So let's go ahead, while that's installing, let's get rid of our error message here. And reboot our client. So what we need to add is this component to our application HBS. Okay, and then it gets injected like a service. And they have a bunch of different styles. So once we get to styling, whether we're doing Foundation, Bootstrap, Semantic, the notification you'll see will reflect that as well. So let's display a error. Or maybe say authentication failed. Okay, what does that look like? What have we just done? There we go, we get this guy. So pretty simple, but this gets us super basic authentication and authorization. So now you can see how requests using the JSON API backend are scoped based on the user, and we're managing sessions in EmberJS using ember-simple-auth. So next time I think I'm going to go over some styling. We're just going to play around in Ember again for the next one. Maybe format our to-do lists, or maybe I'll add a form so you can create to-do items. Haven't decided yet, but that's all I've got for today. So thanks for watching.